Kayak Mike here. I'm about to do a review of my big rig, the things I love about it, some of the things that could be fixed. Granted, it's no longer a boat in production, but if you're looking for one of the best used kayak fishing boats on the market, the Jackson Kayak Big Rig's for you. I am here out in front of Not Marine. They now sell Jackson kayaks. So when we go through this Jackson Kayak Big Rig, I'm not going to hold anything back, and you guys are going to see exactly how I have it set up when I go fishing. Not cleaned, nothing. This is a review of a boat that is used. This is a true review. I'm not saying other reviews aren't true reviews, but this is something that has been used well over 500 hours. This thing has caught well over 500 fish. All right, we're gonna go front to back. The first things first, I have the Motor Guide XI3. It is a great motor. It's not without its problems, but it gets the job done. A few issues I have with it, for some reason my noise disappears some days and comes back other days. That's a big deal, because if you're going downstream at 4 miles an hour, and if you lean over on your remote and you accidentally hit that spot lock button, my face has ended up right here before, because this motor will immediately try and put you in spot lock. What happened to me was I was going about 5.5 miles an hour downstream in about 2.5 mile an hour current on the Ohio River. I accidentally hit the spot lock button. The noise for whatever, the beeping for whatever reason was not working that day. It slammed the brakes and my face literally ended up right here from right there. So you got to be careful, but otherwise it does everything a trolling motor needs to do to get the job done. Cruise control, anchor lock, all that fun stuff. The mount here is a custom made mount from On the Water Innovations. They sell these mounts. Anyone with a Jackson Big Rig can buy this mount. It goes in your pre-built screw holes, so you don't have to mess with your warranty at all. Their hatch system, 10 out of 10. So I was just on the Ohio River in a torrential downpour, and that's all the water that came in. And I guarantee you that water had nothing to do with that downpour. That water is probably spillage that I get from having my wires here. So what happens to me is I have my wires in my bag, come out of the hatch, goes underneath my musky bumper, through my GoPro mount, and it does my cell phone for when I'm live, and it does my GoPro for when I'm out there on the water. The problem is when it's in here, if any water hits this wiring, it drips down. And that's all the water that is in this kayak in a torrential downpour. Almost every other brand kayak, this would be filled with water if they were out in the conditions I was today. This is about the most water you will ever see in this kayak. The front hatch is, and it's due to their design here, and apparently it's even better in the NAR, which I can't wait. The front hatch, I don't use rig ties. I use just plastic bags for my pre-ties. It saves a lot of space because they can get condensed, but just your normal stuff, bug spray, sunscreen, etc., electrical tape, spare line, you know, screwdriver. If anything goes wrong on my kayak at any time, I can be out in the middle of the river and I can fix it. When these are, oh yeah, and I never have these shut. I was in that torrential downpour today, and I never shut these. I never shut these. If these were shut, probably even less condensation and water gets in there. I lay my musky bumper across the bow right here. You'll see there's kind of a slope right here. I do that intentionally because when you're measuring these big fish, if that was a flat surface, you'll see how my musky bumper is slanted. If that was a flat surface, they can slide off much easier. With the back wall of my musky bumper being right here, I can bump the fish using my fish grips, have them bumped so if they flip off, they are still connected to the boat, which has came in handy a few times. But I have them bumped right here. You might think this gets in the way, but it swivels. I swivel it out of the way, I take my picture, I put it right back. And the fish kind of butts up right here, nice and snug. Deck space. This we'll say 9 out of 10 for deck space, and the only reason I'm giving it 9 out of 10 is because the U-Pick is a 10 out of 10. The only other kayak I know that has more deck space in this is the Jackson U-Pick, so that's the only reason this is only getting a 9 out of 10 and not a 10 out of 10. I'm a little fella. I have my seat way far up. But if you can see back here, I still have a good 2 inches between my battery box and the seat. And then right here, another 2 inches between the battery box and this bar. You can move this back theoretically another 6 inches and have even more deck space. It is insane the amount of deck space that you can have. This is my rope for when I launch and retrieve. I have excessive rope here. Somebody smart would put this inside their bow hatch, but I'm lazy. I got my dragon weights in here, 1.5, 2.5, and 4, just in case I'm in a river or a lake. I dragged today, I needed the 4s. And here are my cannonball sinkers for thumping and bumping and back bouncing. And then I just leave 12s, 8s, 4s, 2s. I try and leave my cannonballs inside a bag because I do have scupper holes. Cannonballs will roll around while you're driving. These weights ain't going nowhere, so I'm not worried about that. They don't go nowhere. This pod is not marketed as dry storage. Don't make the mistake and think this is dry storage. This pod right here replaces your pedal drive. This is the best accidental invention of all time on any kayak. If you fill this with water, you have a Livewell right in between your feet that gets covered up super easily, that you can put live shad, live bluegill. If you have a fish net, if you have a little bait net, you can scoop your fish out of here very easily, and you can keep live. This is the only kayak that has a built-in live well. They just don't market it that way. But that is the single best live well of any kayak of all time. You don't have to bring any kind of third-party accessory, and you got yourself a live well. Mine looks disgusting because, like I said, my kayak gets used. But that's one of the only downfalls of this kayak is if you want this to be dry storage, it is not dry storage. All right, moving back, we got the seat. I use a giant cushion, but that's me because I have a back problem. That's not Jackson's fault. No kayak seat's perfect. You'll never find a perfect kayak seat. Everyone has their flaws, but this has changed my ability to go from 1 to 2 hours tops in the water to 8 to 16 hours easily without ever getting off the water. We have my Humminbird Helix 7 Gen 2, I believe, right there with a ram mount. Here I have another ram mount up to my GoPro that is probably going to overheat here in a second. And this is where I go live. Right, if I need to go live, I put my cell phone right here, and then it gets me when I'm fishing. Underneath, this is where I actually advise people to put their storage. I would put all the crap that I have up there in a tackle box, and I would put it under here. Under here, I don't have a lot. I have my crappie magnets and stuff for when I'm trying to get bait fish. I have 2 of these batteries. I think they're 10 amp hour. That will kill one in 5 to 7 hours, full go. But that's why I carry 2. But I got smart with that. I started using lower settings, like dim the screen, turn off all the alarms, etc. So that helps. I never have less than 3 of these on board at a time, these headlamps, because you never know when you're going to need them. I never have less than 4 towels at a time because you never know when you're going to need them. Here's my transducer, and here's a little pro tip on the transducer. I forget, I think this is a Scotty mount. Yeah, it's a Scotty mount. When I'm fishing the river, I intentionally angle my transducer like this because once I hit that current and I start going, it's going to do this. Now my transducer is even with my kayak. Whereas if I set it up like this to begin with, once I hit that current water, now my transducer's back here. So before I go out on the water, I will lock it down and make sure it's at an angle. So when I'm going up and down the heavy current, it comes back to even with the kayak. That's a little pro tip. And that's extremely helpful when you're in a river and you're trying to get shad. There's nothing worse than seeing your side scan and you think the shad are here, but since your transducer was at an angle, they're actually over here. Moving on, stealth rod holders. I have a love-hate relationship with these, and I'll tell you why. I have a love relationship when it's that kind of handle. I have a hate relationship when it's a thin handle. My Whisker Seeker rods, I could not stand these stealth rod holders. I hated them. I wanted to get rid of them. But once I got a rod with a thicker handle, these are the best rod holders out there. Now, there's the misconception that plastic is weaker than metal. Yes, on paper, it's weaker, but people think that a big fish is going to hit this and just break it. That doesn't happen. Kayak Catfish has thousands of hours without a single rod breaking. I have thousands of hours and thousands of fish without a single rod holder or track mount braking and all that fun stuff. Jackson doesn't use cheap, crappy tracking. They use good, I believe, aluminum tracking. So this ain't there's nothing in the river that's gonna break this or pull this off of my kayak. The reason I have the hate relationship with these rod holders is, you see how this can spin freely? Well, in a kayak, you can't always reach everything with two hands. If a fish hit this rod, and if I tried to reel down with one hand, it's gonna spin. I cannot reel down with one hand. That's a big deal on the back rod holders, because I can't physically turn to reach them. If I have this set up for suspending, I cannot physically turn to reach this to reel down. So it's impossible to reel down. But the reason I now have a love relationship with them, no matter how I have this rod in the rod holder, it ain't going nowhere. I could reel down as hard as I want on this with a fish on with one hand and be perfectly fine. So my buddy who makes my custom rods, he's actually going to change all my handles to this material, and I'll never have to worry about that frustration ever again. And another thing, another advantage to these over metal is, in metal, when you're dragging, sometimes I have literally seen rods almost get pulled out of the kayak because it's not a snug fit in metal. With the stealth rod holders, that's a snug fit. You see, that is a snug fit. That's not going anywhere no matter what. And I have almost unlimited options on angles, whereas on the metal ones, you only have max, what, 5 to 6 different angles, tops. I can have this go down, up, I can unscrew it, I can make it go any direction I want. That's another love part for that. I leave my battery box here. Some people put their batteries inside the kayak. I just leave it here. My cast net just goes on top of my battery box. I'm running a 100 amp hour battery in there, 12 volt. I got a 5-foot net in there because I mainly fish Ohio, and a 5 foot's the legal length in Ohio. I got my Orion cooler. Great thing about the big rig, this back bar and the molding in the big rig fits the Orion 25 perfect. Right here. Fits the Orion 25 absolutely perfect. In there, we don't have anything. We have a couple ice packs, a couple drinks that I might get into a little later. But yeah, that's a no-joke cooler, and that fits in that slot perfectly right there. I use a big net. That's the Whisker Seeker net. That's the biggest net you could possibly have. I actually shaved it down. I have rags hanging because of that downpour. All my rags got soaked. I have it shaved down because before, if you broke this net down before, the handle went all the way to here. So if I had this extended, that handle, or the net was open way up there. So what I did was, I never need it longer than this. So I just shaved the back down, threw some baseball tape on it, and now I don't have any sharp edges from the metal. That way my net doesn't get cut, etc. What else? These sidewalls, you would think, so these sidewalls, this is actually an awesome feature. Those are rod holders. You would think intuitively that rod holder would be unsafe because the water comes up to about here, as you can see. You would think waves and stuff would knock your rods out of the kayak. That couldn't be more false. You see all this stuff? This stuff has been here for many, many trips. Same thing when you'll see a bunch of hooks, I'm sure, and my handle, or my fish grips, not my fish grips, my pliers. Those have been down there for many trips, driving, boating, you name it, they've been up there. The water drains perfectly through here, and there's another drainage right there. Also, if you're a fly fisherman, if you have multiple rods for whatever reason, or if you need to store it, you put it there. And this is built in for fly fishermen. You put your rod, boom, right there. And now you have I think it's the only kayak out there that has a pre-mold for fly fishermen. They're reels and long enough to hold their whole entire pole. And yeah, that's my Jackson big rig. That's exactly how I have it set up. We'll give aesthetics a 9 out of 10, just because I don't think there's a kayak out there that is a 10 out of 10 right now. Stability, we're gonna give 11 out of 10. There's not a single kayak out there as stable as this kayak. I don't care what anyone says. Unless the NAR is more stable than this kayak, there is no kayak with the stability class that this one has. Not a single one. The closest kayak I would have to say would be New Canoe, and then the letter number kayak, they're not even close. My buddy actually just flipped one today. I know so many people who have flipped letter number kayaks. I don't know anyone who has flipped a big rig. What else? Deck space, I'm gonna give a 9 out of 10. But like I said before, the only reason it's a 9 out of 10 is because the U-Pick's a 10 out of 10. There's no kayak out there with more deck space than a U-Pick. And what other things can I rate it on? Weight limit, couldn't tell you what the weight limit is. I easily have 400 to 600 pounds worth of stuff in this kayak every single time I go out, minimum. This is only about 3/4 of the way full. Tournament day, I will be 6 to 8 rods. This will be completely full. If I'm doing an overnight trip, this is completely full. I have clothing inside of the kayak. Oh, my wiring. I should probably talk about my wiring really quick. So I just have a pre-built trolling motor kit. It goes through the hull of the kayak, comes out the front hatch, and my motor plugs into it up there. And I have this fuse right there, waterproof. That's kind of important. And I didn't through wire it. There's an awesome feature up here. It's already built in, so you can through wire it. And if you are smart and know how to do all that kind of stuff, I'm sure you can put your own holes. But I knew I was going to have to sell this at some point, so I put no extra holes in this kayak other than what it came with. So that's my kayak, or that's my Jackson Kayak Big Rig review. I hope you guys liked it, and these are no longer being sold new. If you're looking for a new Jackson kayak that's in this class, get the Jackson NAR. But if you want this kayak, you can normally find them used on Facebook Marketplace, etc. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Kayak Mike out of here.